Mariel Brown, and this is Sancoche, a delicious melee of Caribbean people, food and craft. We're in Jamaica, one of my favorite places in the world, to learn how to make jerk seasoning in the beautiful village of Walker's Wood. Bromley is the home of one of Jamaica's great exports. I'm speaking, of course, of Walker's Wood jerk seasoning. And with me this afternoon is Virginia Burke of Walker's Wood to tell us a little bit about how the company got started. Virginia, tell me about the beginnings.
Well, Mariel, back in the 40s, there was the first farming cooperative was actually started at Lucky Hill nearby.
Right.
And the owner of the home here at the time, Minnie Simpson, became very involved with the community development. So they tried to figure out a way to keep people employed and so that they didn't have to go to Kingston or Ocho Rios for jobs.
Right.
And the first idea was to sell jerk pork.
Right.
Because everyone had a little pig in their back garden and they started to sell it to the bars and so on. And this became really quite popular.
Right.
Until it got to the point, well, there was a little incident with a pig, but we won't go into that.
Okay.
And they decided that the best thing to do was to actually bottle the seasoning and make that instead. So we did some research in Portland, which is the home of the Maroons, and where jerk actually came out of the mountains.
Right.
And Walker's Wood Caribbean Foods, which was first called Cottage Industries, was the first company to bottle and export jerk seasoning.
And where did you get the workforce for Walker's Wood?
Well, it was built in from the village, but it really did start with very few people. As you can imagine, it was just a one or two, you know, it's one pot, one person stirring, you know, and hand filling everything.
Right.
And that was back in the, that actually didn't all come together until the early 70s.
Right.
When we started making jerk seasoning, which has now become our flagship product.
Right.
I think we're known internationally for our jerk seasoning now.
Right. Fantastic. So what can you tell me about the history of jerk seasoning?
Well, we give credit for jerk to the Maroons.
Right.
And Maroons were slaves that were owned by the Spaniards. And when they fled, they freed them. But the British that came along wanted to capture them again.
Right.
And they lived in the mountains in Jamaica. They tried to resist and all that. They ended up with their own treaty. But during that time, they hunted the wild pigs that the Spaniards had left behind. And they cooked them in this very spicy way. And that preserved the meat so they could travel for days at a time with it.
So Virginia, when we come back, we're going to be putting some of that old Maroon knowledge into practice, yes?
Yep. I'm going to teach you how to do the jerk.
Fantastic. So stay with us on Sancoche. I have to tell you, I feel enormously honoured to be let in on one of Jamaica's great secrets. It is, of course, the secret of how to make jerk seasoning. And Virginia, I don't know how your nation will greet you or view you in the future having spread the secret, but I am very delighted. So what have we got here, Virginia?
Well, these are the basic ingredients for jerk. I can't give you the secret because everybody has their own secret.
Right.
And there are lots of variations on this. But having done our research and found out what the original Maroons used to use, we have come up with this recipe that seems to do the bill.
Right.
Okay? So we have scallions.
Which, sorry, let me do some translating.
Okay.
Which in Trinidad we call saive, right?
Okay. And these are Scotch bonnet peppers, which in Trinidad you call
Scotch bonnet peppers. But these ones don't seem to me to be quite as intense I mean, they're still intense, but they're more delicious, more like a combination of what we call pimento and Scotch bonnet, I think.
We'll check that. But anyway, we have nutmeg.
Right.
And some thyme, and this is allspice, or better known as pimento in Jamaica.
What you call pimento in Jamaica, yes, right, okay.
And there are some other ingredients that make it more liquefied and so on. So we're going to use a mortar and pestle today, because I think, you know, you can use your electric whizzer, of course, but this is more authentic.
Hey, we're in the country.
All right, you ready?
Right, got
Start pounding. Put some of the scallion in.
How much are we putting in
I would
here?
put about half of that for now. Well, you can put all of it. No, it's fine, it's fine. No, this is probably about 2 Scotch bonnet peppers.
And I noticed
you can use
seeds
more,
are still
or you
there.
can, yes, of course. Well,
Right.
you know, we're purists here.
Right.
You can use all of it, or you can, you know, more or less. That is where you can adjust the temperature to your taste.
Okay.
Okay, so we
I
have.
start just mushing.
There you go. You better start mushing, otherwise it's going
I'll
to get
be
too
here
big.
all day.
All right.
Right, okay.
I'm going to just chuck in a little bit of thyme.
That looks like, what, a teaspoon of thyme?
It's 2 sprigs.
Okay.
This is 2 teaspoons.
Are you getting a bit tongue-tied now?
Yeah. No. this is the pimento.
Right. Allspice. Right.
Allspice.
2 teaspoons of
Right.
allspice.
And here's some cinnamon.
God, it's smelling like
Cinnamon bark it's a hot cinnamon that we use.
Okay.
Here's some nutmeg.
Right. Wow.
And if that's getting a little bit stiff, I'm going to get to the end of the recipe and put some oil in there.
Right. Just a little oil to loosen it up, right?
And there's some vinegar.
Right.
There's some black pepper.
Right. Like about 2.
That's also black pepper. Well, you can vary. That's a teaspoon.
Right,
And a
okay.
teaspoon of salt.
And a teaspoon of salt. Okay.
That looks like a bit more than a teaspoon. All right, and we have here some sugar,
Right.
which just softens all the edges, I think.
Right.
And that should do you. Can you get that really smooshed up?
God, can I get that
Hold
really
a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they probably used to use really big mortar and pestles.
You're like, right. You have to have big muscles to do this, you know. I don't know about my muscle state right now.
That looks good though.
And it smells.
Smell that.
It smells completely wonderful.
Okay.
Wow.
And of course, if you don't want to go to all this trouble, you know what you can do, right?
You can buy a jar of Walker's Wood seasoning.
Absolutely.
Tell me, when you are putting, so we're going to put how much approximately on, say, a chicken?
Well, I would say to you, use about 2 teaspoons for a chicken.
Right.
Start there. Now, if you really like it hot, obviously you can use more.
Right.
The larger the piece of meat you're using, the more seasoning you can put on it. If you're just going to use like a chicken breast, then go really easy. Half a teaspoon.
Okay.
And rub it in. And the most important thing to remember about jerk is that you must leave it to marinate overnight.
Right.
Or at least a couple of hours.
Right.
So that the flavor goes into the meat and you don't just get that heat on the outside. Because sometimes it's blistering hot, they probably cooked it too fast.
Right. And now in terms of actually the barbecuing, I mean, obviously if you don't have a pit, you're just going to have to do it in the oven. But in an ideal situation, you're going to barbecue it on what kind of coals?
Well, ideally you should be using pimento wood.
Right.
You know, we have pimentos that grow all around the area here.
And why do you use that?
But that's really the original maroon way of cooking.
Right.
And it was a pit dug in the earth, and then they layered it with pimento wood.
Right.
And the smoke from the wood went in. Well, we've got the pimento now in the seasoning, so at least you get the pimento that way.
Right.
But that's all part of the secret.
And you were saying, what temperature should the coals be, kind of?
You want the coals to be white hot.
Right.
You don't want flame, because this isn't barbecue really, because you really want it to be quite slow.
Okay.
Quite slow. And don't forget, you can do chicken, fish, lamb, pork, you name it.
It is a fantastic, fantastic seasoning.